All right, we got Pat. Good morning, Pat.
Morning, how are you?
I'm doing great. How you doing?
Good, can't complain, can't complain.
Well, welcome everybody to our Leadership Masterclass. As you guys know, we do this every other Tuesday. It's our national leaders call. As you guys know, every other week, we do the campaign specific leaders call. So we're very excited about today's topic and today's speaker. First off, I want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. Hope everybody was safe and enjoyed time with their friends and family. I'm really excited. We have some, face-to-face owners meetings coming up. We got one this Saturday. We're doing it as safe as possible, spreading it out, 2 different meetings. Just really pumped to see people again. I know there's already being some regional meetings planned for the whole country for different divisions across the board. So we're really excited about that. But until then, this is all with COVID cooperating as we hope. But until then, we're going to keep bringing you guys these Zoom calls every other Tuesday and every Tuesday for you guys that are on specific programs. And it's really great. And I hope you guys take notes. And we've heard so much good feedback from this. And the speakers really come prepared with different things when it comes to mentality. And today, guys, you're going to hear about overcoming adversity. And you're going to hear it from somebody who has an amazing story within our training program. You know, it was a year ago today, Pat, you started in JP's office. And when we talk about overcoming adversity, you had to watch JP overcome adversity in his office. And I remember this because JP spoke on a call and he had to remove some people that were really not the right people in his business. And he had to rebuild basically from scratch. And you were one of those people that he took out in the field, that he trained firsthand himself. 5 months after you started, you became an owner. And that is got to be one of the fastest times we've ever seen. And that's what we're really excited about in today's world, in our business, is that people are getting promoted faster. So you saw JP overcome adversity, you got promoted to ownership, and then you faced your own challenges when you opened up. So can you talk a little bit about how was it to get promoted that fast? But then when you opened up, what was the experience you had? What were the negatives you had? And what did you have to do to overcome them?
Yeah, well, first I want to start by saying thanks for having me on the call. I appreciate it. But I opened up just back in April from JP's office, started down there, and it was an exciting time. Coming in, it was a small group of us, so it kind of prepared me to come up here and open up with a smaller group of individuals. So coming up here in April, I came up with 2 individuals who were fairly new within the business. They were only with the business for about a month and a half, 2 months. And they came up here for not all the right reasons. They were coming up here, they were looking not to work every single day, not to put their head down and start grinding. They kind of wanted to go out, see the city, and do things like that. And I couldn't understand why, when I was bringing people in, why they wouldn't stick. Then I remember a conversation I had with both JP and Rob is people start because of the environment and they stay because of the opportunity. So it was a tough decision, but after talking to Rob and JP itself, realized we had to let those 2 go. So it was kind of just myself again and rebuild from the ground up. And then a few months later, we got up to about a group of 6 to 8 guys. We were doing really well, doing about 65 apps a week. Then we had an incident in our office happen where everybody fell off except for one person. So me and one of my leaders now, who should be pushing for assistant manager the next month and a half, Brody. So, and for me, I was down. I'm not gonna lie, I got down on myself. But then I remembered, with everything, with every challenge, every adversity comes a learning lesson. So it's where I kind of took the opportunity to sit him down, have the conversations with him about the business. He kind of got the accelerated look at it a little earlier than most people, but just explaining the importance of it, how the business works. And eventually we built back up to where we are now. We have about 13 guys in our office now, and we're doing between the 65 to 70 apps every single week.
Wow. Well, when anybody starts in our business, one of the things we talk about is we say, hey, this is like business boot camp. We're gonna cram 10 years of experience into less than 10 months, and that 10 years that we're cramming is full of ups and downs. It's full of challenges that people may have not faced before, and the training program is really built to do that. It's built to test you. It's built to give you scenarios you've never faced before, and then what it's doing is giving you that confidence to overcome them, to then not be so fearful of the next time you face those challenges. And you're a great example of someone who came into the business and didn't look at it and say, I'm going to take a year, I'm going to take a year and a half. You said, I'm doing this in 5 to 7 months. You even told me your goals. You wrote it down on your notebook. Your first day, I want to become a manager, a branch manager within 5 to 8 months. And you did that. But it wasn't all, sunshine and butterflies. You had challenges along the way. And I think when people think of management, they think that that's where it's easy street. Now everything's great because you're a manager, not so fast, right? In fact, there's more challenges you face, but obviously the rewards of overcoming them are even greater. And so now you must feel very, not bulletproof, but you feel like I can overcome a lot, because going down to just you, a lot of people would have just said, hey, maybe I can't do this. But you didn't say that. You went in the field, you rebuilt your situation. And I know so many owners that if they had your mentality, they would accomplish so much in our business. So kudos to you. I'm excited to hear about it. And today, guys, Pat's going to talk about the mentality of how to overcome adversity, because we're all going to face it. We all face it no matter what we do, no matter what stage in the training program you're at, whether you're a new leader, whether you're pushing for management, whether you're just in the team building phase. We want you guys to listen in, take notes. And if there's any questions you guys have throughout the meeting, fire them off in the chat. We'll answer them as we go. And we want to make this as interactive as we possibly can. So Pat, again, great job on your situation, but let's hear it from you, and let's go through your slide.
I appreciate it. So topic today is facing and overcoming adversities. So if we go over to the next slide, I picked this topic because I, like many others, have faced many challenges throughout my program. I just think the biggest difference between myself and others, whether they still be in the business or not, is not how the challenges I faced, but how I chose to face them and look at them and overcome them. So the four main topics I want to do is our mindset behind it. So how do we view adversities? What is our perceptions of it? With that, breaking down and analyzing our challenges. So do we know the root of the cause? Can we pinpoint what exactly we can fix? Seeing the value behind adversity. So what we can learn and take away from the challenges we face throughout our program. And then most importantly, implementing what we learned from our mistakes. So how can we prevent these mistakes from happening again for both ourselves and our future teams?
So when you look at someone and you say, okay, the mindset between how you look at adversity, when something quote unquote bad happens to a person, right? When you look at something, and whether we think it's unlucky or we think it's unfortunate, there's kind of like those two paths, which you'll talk about. But, when someone faces something, the usual response is, oh man, I'm unlucky. This is bad. Now more bad things might happen. And they kind of become less confident and they don't look at it as a good thing. How did you look at adversity and challenges compared to maybe someone who struggles with it?
Yeah, so in the initial stages, I just like everybody else, kind of looked at it as a negative, but I sat down with JP, we had a conversation. And then it's once I changed my mindset, and I always view it now from like a sports mentality. I'm a big sports guy. It's what can I learn from the challenges to grow from it and make sure these challenges don't happen again. So if I didn't have the day I wanted in the field or training, it's like, all right, so what went wrong throughout the day and what can we do moving forward so that that doesn't happen again?
And what do you think for you going through your training program? Because a lot of the people listening are leaders. What was the kind of like the first initial challenges, adversity that were the tough things to overcome?
Yeah, so in the initial stages, it was mindset. So with myself going out there, it was always, I was a half glass empty type of guy instead of a half glass half full. And changing that, realizing looking for the good in everything that went wrong is something that really helped fast track, my time throughout the business. Looking for the positives throughout every single situation itself.
What's interesting about that, I think sometimes people think that the way they are is the way they are. And what we don't realize is that by being around people who are way more positive than us, people that have a different perspective than us, it can infect us in a good way. We don't like to use the word infect in today's world, but it infects us in a good way. And you're saying that you kind of came in and you were, glass half empty. You were looking at the negatives a lot. And the difference between you and maybe other people is that you kept having conversations with JP, you kept having conversations with Rob, and their perspective started to shape your perspective, right? Because you started seeing it through their eyes and saying, you know what, that's a better way to look at it. Why? Well, look where these guys are at, right? So you used sort of their positions and you said, well, these are the people I want to be influenced by. Or other leaders, sometimes they gravitate towards the other fellow leaders in the office because they feel like they have something in common with them. And, it's kind of like your network is your net worth. And so if you're only networking with people that are leaders, that's kind of where you'll be stuck. So I love the fact that, and if you're listening, it's kind of like when you face your adversities, who are you talking to about them, right? Who are you actually getting perspective from? Because the difference for Pat, he faced them just like you guys did. He was negative. He wasn't seeing the bigger picture, but he had conversations with his managers and that helped shape his mentality. So I love the fact that you did that.
Absolutely. And then if we go over to the next slide, it's going to be what is adversity and when do we face it? So adversity itself, it's just a series of continued difficulties or misfortunes. But if you like it explained down simple like myself, it's just difficulties and challenges we face daily. They can take a lot of different forms in our business: physical, emotional, financial, specific conflicts within itself throughout the whole time. So I know when you're going out there in the initial stages in the leadership development part, it's more so we try and focus on the emotional side, how it can relate with others, and things throughout the process there. And then also throughout the management training program, whether it's big or small, sometimes it's just as simple as when I first started in the initial stages, I was always assumed everybody didn't want it, so were going to say no. But it was changing the mindset, seeing how I could impact my future team to help them keep that positive mindset and that positive outlook on everything.
And for you, Pat, let's talk about some specifics. Let's go into, because I want the people listening to maybe ask questions about their specific situations as well. What was the first challenge that you really dealt with in the training program beyond just your mindset? Let's talk about specific, whether it was recruiting, maybe you struggle with that. Now you got promoted fast, so maybe you're able to fix these challenges quickly, but what were some of the major challenges that made you question yourself or made you lose confidence?
Yeah, the first one was I was awful at sales. I know it's surprising, but I was absolutely terrible. And sitting down, having the conversations with, JP, Rob, continuously night after night, I just couldn't figure out what I was doing wrong. And the first thing I figured out is I was trying to sell. That's what they like. When JP told me that, I was like, well, what do you mean? That's what I'm supposed to be doing. And then I realized that Verizon sells itself. People buy it because of us. They buy into us as individuals. So it was having the conversations, getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, which is one of my biggest sayings, and really just trying to get to know people out
there. Yeah. When people come into our business, sometimes they think that it's all about who's the best salespeople. Especially, when I was new, I wasn't the best. I was okay. And I used to think, well, yes, of course, we all want to be good in the field. But I learned a long time ago that our business, there's way more important characteristics to someone that we look for beyond just their ability to sell, because we can teach someone how to sell, right? And there's many people who they think they're the best person in the office because they're really good at sales, but they lack other areas. So you're an example of a guy, and I think it's good for leaders on the call that are listening in, when you have someone on your team, or even if it's you and you're not great at sales, well, you can't just tell yourself, hey, I suck at sales and that's what I am. You got to look at it and figure out what you're doing wrong to get ahead. Because, Pat, you didn't start off good in sales, but you recognized it. And instead of saying, hey, I can't do the business, I got to quit, you went to your mentors and coaches and they told you something that clicked in your head. And then I'm assuming you went from being bad at sales to good at sales, right? And then it became something where you're looking at the business saying, well, now I have an opportunity. And so you overcame the initial thing of I can't sell, which, by the way, most people coming in, if you look at our vice presidents, you look at a lot of people in our business, a lot of them that are the most successful were not the best salespeople in the office, but they had to work really hard to become systematic, to become someone who really trusted the law of averages. And eventually that made them a better trainer because they were relatable, right? Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, they're not very good coaches because they're like, why'd you miss the shot? So if you're a person that struggled at sales, but you became good at it, use that to your advantage and become relatable when you're coaching your new people. So I think it's a good lesson. Again, we all face adversities, but you're hearing a guy that got promoted in 5 months that's admitting when he first started the training program, he was not good at sales. So that's a good lesson for everybody.
Absolutely. And one of the biggest things with that too is just implementing things, which we're going to touch on a little later in the slide itself, but implementing the feedback you get from other individuals. But if we go to the next slide, it's going to be how we view adversity. So there's pretty much two types of individuals on how we view it. So you can see person A is negatively viewed. So these are individuals where when something goes wrong, they start to make excuses and justifications for why things happen. And the second type of person is somebody who looks at it as a growth opportunity. So seeing what they can learn from the mistakes and challenges that they face, rather than making excuses and justifying their actions in the field or in everyday life and training with anything. One of the biggest things here is, as I stated, when I first started, I was person A. I viewed everything like, oh, well, this happened because of that. This happened because of this. And one of the biggest things, being a big sports guy, having the conversation was I just kind of related everything back to sports. Like when I played volleyball, if I ever got beat, it wasn't because I didn't make an excuse like, all right, what can I do to make sure that doesn't happen again? So once I started to compare it to something that was really relatable for myself in my life, that's when everything started to kind of click for me. And that's when I became over person B, seeing what I could learn from every challenge and every mistake I've made throughout my process. Even in the learning process with coaching and training. So this was an example I was going to touch on a little later, but I feel like it fits in here. So there was a point when I was in the field and all I talked about was sports. I had trouble relating with other individuals. I really didn't know how to find a common ground for everybody. And it's funny because there's actually this one girl, Allie, she just recently opened up in Buffalo. She was the first person who made me realize this. So I was training her out in the field and we were talking, I was talking about sports, like I usually did. And I thought it was just common, everybody likes sports. And we stopped and she's like, listen, man, like, I don't know anything about sports. You're going to have to switch it up for me. And I was like, I just kind of looked, I was like, whoa. And it was kind of funny because it helped me realize like, I have to be more versatile with everything from coaching to training to, leveling with individuals, to getting to know about them, not just talking about things that interest me, but things that interest them as well.
Yeah. And when you look at, you're saying there's two types of people here. One, something bad happens. They look at it like, woe is me. This is a bad thing. How unlucky am I? And they kind of dwell on it. Right now, you became a person who recognized it. You made the transition and you became a person who started learning from it, and you took your sports background and you applied it. Now, there's a lot of leaders who are going to recruit people and they're going to be that negative they're going to be the person A. So as a leader who eventually becomes that example, who has a positive outlook, who moves forward, learns his lessons, doesn't point the finger, how do you handle people who have that negative mindset right away? What are those conversations like? How do you go about it? Because I'm assuming some of them can change, but then there's others who don't. So how do you deal with that type of person?
Yeah, so in the initial stages, we all think it's just as easy as telling them they have to change their mindset. But nothing's ever that simple. So we have to sit down, have conversations and relate with them. So when I have individuals coming in my office and they're having, that mindset where everybody's going to say no, blaming the territory, I sit down, I have real conversations like, listen, I understand where you're coming from. I was the same exact way when I started, but this is how I started to change my mentality, how I started to view things. And this is why I started to progress throughout the business as fast as I did. And I give them examples from the time when I had the conversation with JP where I was expecting everybody to say no. And then when they said, yeah, it kind of threw me off. I relate that back to them. It kind of makes myself more personable, more as a person, rather than somebody who's telling you what to do without actually being through it, which is why I love this business so much, because you have to start at the initial entry-level position to go through all the challenges that everybody else goes through so you can relate to others and coach them off of that.
Yeah. And it's almost like mindset's kind of like, working out, right? Like when you meet someone, you can't take them to the gym one time when they haven't lifted weights before and say, hey, now you're going to be a bodybuilder. Like they're going to work out. And yeah, of course, like they're going to be sore. And most people, when they work out and they don't see the results right away, they say, hey, I guess it's not for me. I'm going to quit my gym membership. And to get into really, really good shape, you have to do it, a lot. You have to do it every day or every other day for months and months and months. And then you get stronger and stronger, but your mentality is something you have to maintain. You can't, it can digress if you let it digress. And I think like like you talked about when you're coaching people, it's kind of like every conversation is like a session. It's like a gym session where they go in, they work out, and don't take for granted these little conversations you have. And if you even look at it like, you're planting a tree, what I mean? Like you're planting a seed, it's the beginning. Eventually the roots set in, eventually this tree grows. And that's where the development of someone is super important. And, we never stop developing, right? If you're a leader on the call and you think I'm a leader and now my mentality is good enough to be an owner, you're mistaken. If you're an owner and you think your mentality is, good enough to be a VP, you're mistaken. If you're a VP or whatever, and you think your mentality is good enough, you're mistaken. You got to continue to go to people and to have those conversations. And if you're a leader coaching people, you got to look at it like it's your responsibility to develop people's mentality. So you're hearing it from Pat, who went from a guy who had that problem. Then he started building a team and he identified, well, I've got to relate to them, right? I can't just talk about sports. I got to find things that make sense to them. And what did you learn through that process, Pat, about coaching people's mentality? There had to be those points where you coached them, you had conversations, and you realized, all right, this is not going to work. Like I've had many conversations, but this person's not changing. How do you handle the difference between someone who can evolve and someone who can't?
Yeah. So it's really sitting down and analyzing the situation. So in the initial stages, a lot of us think it's going to change overnight, but it's not. We have to get that 1% better every single day. I know when I first started coaching and training for the individuals, when I'd give them feedback, if they weren't doing it the next day, I would get angry. But then I realized that was a foolish thing to do because I can't implement something great overnight and expect it to change. Now, for the individuals who you're giving the feedback to, you're having those conversations with them, you don't, and they still don't want to change or add things into their game. It's simply coaching them to their goals. That's what I tell my guys every single day. So you sit down, you have a conversation with them, see what their goals are. This way you can hold them accountable to those goals. If they want to grow, get into a leadership position, and eventually open up their own office, then you have to have that conversation with them. That's how you're going to coach them. But if they're simply just there to do the sales itself, then coach them to do the sales. There's nothing wrong with that. And the biggest thing I tell my guys when they're training every single day, ask the individuals you're training, how do you like to be coached? Do you like more of a direct approach or do you like more of a softer approach? And this helps hold them accountable throughout the process as well, because there's some individuals who will tell you they like a more direct approach coaching style, but then when you give them a more direct approach coaching style, they kind of get defensive. And then that just allows you to hold, that first conversation you had with them to them, like, listen, I'm only coaching this way because that's based upon what you told me, but I can switch it up for you if you'd like.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think it's one of those things where, we building a team, we've said this many times before, is a law of averages process. And, we know we're looking for that top 10%. And it's important you guys realize you're not here to change someone, right? You're here to develop someone who's got the initial ingredients. But if you got a person that is super negative and you're constantly babysitting, you're constantly trying to cheer them up, you're constantly trying to have them see the bright side, eventually you got to make that decision. And Pat, you faced this when you opened up your office, right? You had people that were kind of just negative. They weren't positive. They didn't see the bigger picture. And you spent X amount of time trying to make them a certain way or help them, but they just weren't. So it's just as important to look at people and develop them as it is, though, to move on from someone who's just not the right example. And I'm guessing for you, that was not easy, right? To move on from people who, they were loyal, quote unquote. They'd expanded with you. You felt like maybe you owed them something. So what was that process like when you got someone who's negative and you feel like you owe them? How did you change your mindset from you owe them, but you owe them to get them out of the business, not to have them stay?
Yeah, so it was hard. Continuous conversations, and it got to the point where it just felt like it was repetition. Nothing was changing. And then I just sat him down and said, listen, I'm gonna be honest with you. You're coming in, you're looking like you're not enjoying work itself. You're not happy. It's translating directly to the field, and it was infecting the environment here. And I said to him, I was like, listen, do you think this is the best opportunity for you? I was like, I understand you moved up here with me. We did this together, but if you don't think it's the opportunity for yourself, I'm not going to be upset with that. This business isn't for everybody. And by sitting them down and just having that one-on-one conversation with them without doing that in front of other people, it helped them kind of level out to see that the business really wasn't for them. They weren't able to face the challenges that came with it. The mentality maybe wasn't there, but it's sitting down, leveling with them and having just a genuine conversation. Bringing it down to like, listen, I appreciate you coming up here. I appreciate you, taking the opportunity to take that chance to expand and build with me. But, for both of us sitting here talking, it just doesn't seem like you're into it anymore. It doesn't seem like your heart is in the business itself.
Yeah. I think it's a good lesson for everybody listening. Some people think it's their responsibility to fix all the problems. If someone's on their team, they have to make this person successful. And a part of handling adversity is knowing when to cut it off, because you got to protect the business, you got to protect your attitude, and you got to protect your time. And so when you look at problems on your team, or you look at the people you're building, if these people don't have a good attitude, like if they're not excited to work and they're not coming in with that go-getter attitude, I mean, that's where you draw the line. You're like, hey, if you don't want to be here, this is, we're not going to beg for a dance. We're not going to, convince you. And that really goes for anything in life. Like if I were to do another business and I were to start with a small group of people, my first, requirement would be, you want to be here. Like you want to be here, you're excited to be here, and let's get to work. The rest of it we can develop and coach. The skills we can improve, but your attitude's got to be the first thing, first and foremost. So if you're looking at your team and you're saying, okay, I've got to solve all their negatives. No. You've got to identify the people who want to be here, who are willing to fix them, who are coming in eager to learn, versus the people who just keep bringing drama to you, those people, you got to tell them, hey, maybe this isn't a good fit. And you probably had, Pat, such an easier time building your office as soon as those negatives were removed, right?
Oh, absolutely. And in the initial stages, I was scared to let them go because it was just me and those two. But what I realized is that negative energy is contagious. Nobody wants to come into an office every single day and be around people who aren't happy, who have a negative mindset itself. And then I found out once, I did get rid of those two, I started to build 10 times quicker because I was in control of the environment. It was myself. I was looking happy. I was upbeat, and people were starting to stick, and the environment started to form itself.
Yeah, man, it's like so common. Like you see it not only in your situation, but over the years that I've been in the business, whenever I see an office struggling, it's even a leader struggling, it's typically because they're way too focused on the wrong people. They're way too focused on trying to make someone that's in front of them successful when they're just not the right person. And it doesn't mean people that are struggling can't be the right person, but it's kind of like you got to recognize when enough's enough. And it's always really important to just keep the recruiting funnel going. Continue to work with new people. Don't be so, pigeonholed on one person. And I've got to make this person successful because they've spent 6 months with me. No, you got to do what's best for them. You got to help them see that they should leave the training program and not stick around. And not saying you remove everybody, but I think like when we look at adversity, a big part of it is team building. That's the thing that teaches us the most about ourselves is how we interact with others, how we train and develop other people to become stronger. And a part of that is being, the bearer of the truth, the bearer of bad news in some senses, which is actually good news by telling people, hey, if you can't do X, Y, and Z, it's not going to work. You got to move on. So, the fact that all of us go through that and that you went through it as an owner is really incredible. And it's such a good lesson for everybody listening. So.
Absolutely. And the biggest thing I tell everybody too is you can't want it more for somebody else than they want it for themselves. Because you're just going to tire yourself out, pushing them to do the things. And then you're going to start turning it back on yourself and saying, what am I doing wrong? When in reality, they just don't want it for themselves as much as you want it for them.
Yeah. Again, most people need a boss. Most people need, constant supervision. That's one of the things about our business that we don't really know about people is when people are on their own or people are left to their own devices, what do? And we look for those people who are self-starters, who are self-motivated, and people can look really good on paper. They can have a fancy resume. They can talk really good. They can act sharp. But, when push comes to shove, a lot of those people, they just don't have it when the chips are down. And that's okay. We don't look down at people. I never look down at someone who can't go in the field. It's hard. But those tests are happening in all phases of life. And that's kind of an initial sign like, okay, this person probably shouldn't be a leader of other people at this stage in their life. Maybe it's not the right time, but right now this person can't even manage themselves. All right, we got to move on and time to get to the next person. So really good stuff.
Absolutely. And if we go to the next slide, it's going to be analyzing our challenges. So the main thing is, how do we analyze our challenges? Before we analyze them, we have to understand what the challenges are. And in every step of the management training program, there's going to be different challenges that we face. For example, in the entry level, most of the challenges we face will be most likely around production. So not being consistent in the field, maintaining mentality, continuously getting talk tos, productions lows, presentations. And we have to understand why these things are happening. And that's why daily breakdowns are important. So coming back, how many talk tos, how many laps you did, how many houses you hit, how many presentations you got, and then how many apps you got into. And this is really important in the initial stages to grow and develop throughout the process, because some individuals will make some of those numbers up, and the individuals who really want to grow and get better will hold themselves accountable. And that's one of the biggest things that helped me progress through this as quickly as I did, was even if it wasn't the day I was still honest with myself. You got to be honest with yourself and your results and what happened out there in order for you to learn from it and grow from the mistakes that you did that day.
Yeah. And I think regardless of what stage you're at, especially as you're growing in the training program, one of the key elements to helping people overcome adversity is just being super relatable. The thing I think that makes a good coach is someone who can put yourself in their shoes. You can't look at people and act like, oh, you should just overcome this and it's super easy, because you got to think about yourself when you're in their shoes. And one of the things we talk about in my office a lot is when you're having a conversation with someone about something that's happening to them, the first step is, you got to relate. And when we look at overturning objections, we always talk about read, relax, relate. Well, someone facing an adversity is kind of like an objection that they're giving, they're showing that you are now managing within this person. And you've got to read, relax, relate, right? You've got to read the person, you got to relax them, and you got to relate and say, hey, I've been in your shoes. And there's nothing better to a person facing adversity to hear someone else tell them, hey, I've been there, right? And that's one of the things that I love about our business is that, you know, regardless of where you're at, there's always somebody in front of you who's been in your shoes, who's overcome it, and now has stories to tell of how to do it, right? And so for everybody, whether you're the person that's facing the adversity or you're a person that's managing someone who's facing the adversity, there's a solution to it. But you just got to be thinking, am I approaching it the right way? Whether I'm the person that needs the advice or I'm the person that's giving the advice, I've got to go into it with the right mindset. And we talked about at the beginning of the call, you know, if you look at people and you just expect them to, you know, get better over one conversation, you're mistaken. I mean, that's not how people develop. So for you, you know, Pat, kind of like that balancing act of you facing adversities versus coaching people, you know, what did you do when you were going through the training program, when you faced adversities beyond just you talked to Rob, you talked to JP, but then what did you do after you talked to them? You implemented what they told you, correct? Like how did that process go from networking to then implementing it? Because I think some people ask, but then they don't necessarily apply.
Yeah, so this is the hardest part because this is where you're really sitting down and looking at yourself and saying, all right, this is what I need to fix. And it's going to be difficult to implement it the first couple of days, but it's just slow steps. So I tell my guys in the office, get 1% better every single day. So look for the one thing you want to improve on every single day and just focus on that. And then by changing that one thing every single day, it's going to help you slowly start to grow and develop and help you hold yourself accountable throughout the process to where now it's going to be easier to implement the things you need to work on. It's going to be easier to step outside of those comfort zones, and it's going to be easier to hold yourself accountable throughout the process.
And let's talk about when you became a leader that was about to get promoted. What were the biggest challenges you faced from being a top leader to expanding? Because you expanded, but your crew wasn't huge, right? So you went with the crew, the team was small, they weren't necessarily the right people. So what challenges did you learn from how you went from a guy who got promoted to then expanded with guys who really weren't the right fit? Like, what did you learn from that process, and what would you do differently next time?
So you're talking about when I moved from Jersey to expanding up here?
Yep.
So the biggest thing, I would have just had better conversation before I left. You know, really making sure we were all on the same page, because coming up here, the biggest challenge I faced was coming from JP's office. It was like a well-oiled machine. Everybody knew what we were doing. The excitement was there. And coming up here, we had the initial, you know, week and a half, 2 weeks of excitement. It was a new place, new office. But then once we got down to the nitty-gritty of it, where we were grinding, it was just the three of us. We were trying to look and build this up together. The excitement kind of dwindled and kind of faded. So the thing I could have done better looking back on it is better conversations continuously, helping them see the bigger picture, helping them coach and train them through the challenges they were facing at that time. Because for myself, I was still a new owner. So I was looking at it as like, well, we're all going through the same thing. Let's just continue to push through it. But I should have sat down, realized from their aspect, they moved here from a different place as well. They have to see the bigger picture, see the bigger value in what we came up here to do.
Yeah. So for those of you guys listening, like it's interesting because, you know, Pat came from an office, right? JP, he's crushing it. His office is doing really well. You know, you use the term well-oiled machine. Everyone's there's a natural enthusiasm that's been built over time. So when you guys open up, and a lot of you guys are on that cusp where you're going to open up the next, whatever, 2, 3, 4 months, it's kind of recognizing that you're now in charge of that culture, that attitude, that mentality, and you've got to protect it with everything you got. And so what Pat's saying is that the challenge he faced was he just didn't, you know, demand or even have conversations enough with his guys that expanded on what they need to think and act like in order for this to grow. You know, you became a little fear lost, right, by those guys. And you were like, oh crap, they're not happy. Oh crap. You know, and then so eventually that ends up becoming kind of a scared, we call it like playing defense, not offense. So it's really important whether even if you're in an office that's a well-oiled machine, you got to look at your crew like it's your own little business, and you've got to manage it that way. And especially when you open up, it's going to be small. So you're going to face the challenges of, you don't have all the enthusiasm, you don't have all these people running around. So you got to be the star of the show, and you got to demand that your core leaders, they understand that too. And I think that's a really good, another lesson in terms of overcoming adversity, because way more owners face that problem than it's talked about. We all think, oh, ownership, I expanded and everyone was so excited the whole time. The honeymoon phase ended for Pat's crew. And then it was like, well, now we're not in JP's, we're in a new city, I'm homesick, blah, 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 blah. And you got to face that and you got to address it and you got to fix it quick. You can't let those problems fester because then they eventually become bigger. So, hey, he faced the challenge. It got as bad as it could get. And Pat said, all right, time to rebuild. And he went out in the field and he rebuilt it. And he did it twice. He didn't just do it once, he did it twice in his first 3 or 4 months being open. So I can't stress that enough. It's such a valuable lesson for people that are even building teams now. If you've built it once, you can build it again, no matter what situation you're in.
Absolutely. And the big thing is just preempting conversations. Don't be scared to have a conversation. It's going to feel uncomfortable at times. I know for me in the initial stages it did, but it helps you grow. So I've gotten better at conversations over time, at seeing situations that are going to happen before they do happen, just by trial and error, by going through it, by facing these adversities, but learning from them. If I would just made excuses for the the challenges I faced when I first opened up, I would have never learned and grow from them, and it would have just repeated itself. But now learning from those past mistakes, looking back on them and continuously analyzing them to see what I could have done differently is what's helping me moving forward.
Yeah. So there's 2 things with that. Okay. So you have, as a leader, you're going to face a challenge. The hardest part is oftentimes talking about it with someone, because either you're embarrassed, your ego's in the way, you feel maybe not confident and you just want to fix it yourself. So you don't bring that conversation to someone who can actually help you. You let it fester. The other thing that I was really bad at was when I recognized a negative with someone, I did not want to talk to them about it. Like, I did not like confrontation. I was like, man, this person, they showed up late 2 days in a row. I'm just going to, hopefully they don't show up late again, or they come in with a weird look on their face and you just kind of, you see it as a problem, but you don't act on it. Right. And what Pat just talked about was have the conversations right away, right? Get used to attacking problems very quickly, right? Don't let the problems sit. Don't let the problems don't wait a day. If the conversation needs to happen, have it now, right? Don't wait till tomorrow, have it now. And I think that's valuable for you as a person that wants to get better. Network fast, right? And then if you're coaching people, have conversations fast for people that you see a problem happening. Because if you wait 1 day too long, that could be the difference of the person falling off or completely making the decision that they can't do it. So you really got to be on the offense at all times with any adversity, whether it's yourself or the people you're managing. And guys, if there's any questions, please fire off. We're going to leave a few minutes for Q&A for any questions you guys might have about challenges you're facing within team building, challenges you're facing within recruiting, challenges you're facing within training. These are all things Pat obviously is an expert in, and he's in the middle of doing it, and he's overcome a lot. So sorry, Pat, continue.
No, that's all right. And then I was just going to go into the leadership part. Some of the most common challenges and adversities we face in leadership obviously comes down to building a crew, but more so to that, as I touched on earlier, was relating to different individuals with different backgrounds and, different hobbies and personalities itself. And then on top of that, I think this was a big one, building the wrong type of relationships in leadership. So the big thing I want to touch on with that is, this is going to sound like a weird saying, but this is what I tell my guys all the time. You want to have the people on your team want to have a beer with you, but respect you enough not to ask. And the meaning behind that is like, you want to build that personal relationship to where they look up to you, they feel comfortable telling you their problems, but they still respect you as a business partner. And I tell my guys, every person that, eventually steps into this office, is on your team or works with us, look at them as a future business partner. And that'll help you grow your teams a lot faster.
Yeah. And I think like the hard part too is like when I came in, I was 23 years old, 24. I came from bartending. You came from like, managing a nightclub, and like, typically the relationships that we develop in the workspace for a lot of our previous careers is we don't look at it like where people would look up to us. We kind of just look at ourselves as a peer. So when you come into this environment, it takes people a while to realize that like you actually need to build people's respect around you. I was never in a position of like leadership where people were watching my every move. And, if I acted too, casual, or I said stuff that was like, I would say with my buddies, where it's way too casual, I didn't realize that like that would affect the way people perceive me. And so it's a really big challenge for people that come in to understand that even though you might be a leader and you don't have anybody on your team, you have to start kind of looking at the whole office as if, what if they worked for you, right? What if everybody around you was on your team? And what would you then act like? How would you dress? How would you carry yourself? And that's the hard part for many people, is that they come in and it doesn't really matter their age. Some people can be, older, but they act really immature. And I'll never forget, we were at a boat cruise meeting, and there was a guy that I brought to the boat cruise, and he was doing really well in the business, and he was 21. And so Larry says to him, "Hey, it's really, really exciting that you're so young, but your challenge is you're 21 years old and you're going to have to act like you're 31, or you're going to have to act like you're 41. And that's going to be your challenge." And so for a lot of us, we're so used to, oh, let's grab a beer after work with our guys, or let's go, what are you up to Saturday night? Let's go out together. And yeah, like you think of that as the normal relationship, but that's not the relationship you really want to build with your people. You want to have those connections, but you don't want it to be this thing where we just go out and that's how we bond. Because eventually people won't respect you. Like they just looked at you like, oh, you're just another person. So that's a big, big thing for everyone to listen to in terms of the challenges and the adversities you face. Many of them are self-created by the actions that you take in terms of the relationships you build with your people. So again, everyone can run their team the way they want to run them. But in my experience, I don't go out with my guys. I have dinners, and if it's a dinner with people and there's one beer that's had, it's not the end of the world, but I don't drink with my people. And I think it's a good advice from someone that's already been successful so fast, is to not cross that line. And how did you learn that? Because you came from that world. How did you navigate that?
So it's weird because JP and myself, we'd have conversations about the importance of, developing a team, holding yourself accountable, having those high standards, and having them want to look up to you. And this kind of really hit home for me. I just went home for Thanksgiving last week, hung out with friends, families. When I was there, I was kind of analyzing everything. And I realized, like, seeing my friends from home, like, not because we don't respect each other or value our opinions, but neither of us would take business advice from each other. Because we just know each other on too much of a personal level that if I tried to give them business advice, if they tried to give me business advice, we just wouldn't take each other seriously. And that's the thing, like if you're going out, building your team, drinking with your guys, doing things like this, they're not going to hold you to that higher standard to where they're looking up to you and want to get advice from you. They're just going to feel like, oh, well, we go out all the time, so like I don't really value his opinion that much.
And how did you change that? Because you came in, that was kind of how you're the world you came from. How did you change it? You talked to Rob, you talked to JP, and then I'm assuming you made some mistakes, and then you're like, okay, that didn't work, and then you had to fix it.
Yeah. So initial stages, we'd go out. I went out, not gonna lie, I went out with one of my guys before, got a beer. But then I realized, like, when I tried to coach and train him through situations, he wasn't taking me as serious as the others were. And it was really just like, all right, so I was told something, I didn't implement it the first time, but now I'm seeing the repercussions of it. So now let's not continue to make that mistake, just implement it right now. Yep. And instead of going out, maybe grabbing a beer, talking about work, we'd go out to Applebee's, get half price apps, talk to each other about that. Sometimes we would just hit Topgolf. We would do other activities to where we could still talk and bond, but not have to do it like over a beer.
Yeah. And I think it's just, you got to learn quick. The thing about life is we're all going to get, we're going to get shown what mistakes we made. We just got to learn quickly from them and not make the same mistakes over and over again. And we got a question here. How would you change the relationship you have with your team if the relationship currently wasn't the right relationship? So let's say you crossed the line. How do you fix it?
So I'd say the best way to do that is to sit down and just have a conversation. Be like, listen, I know we've been doing this before, but this isn't the right way to go if we want to hold each other accountable and both grow within the business itself. So from here, if we want to, talk about the business, I recommend we just go bowling, or we just go out to eat, or we do things like this, but we can't continue to go out, hang out outside of work, get drinks and do stuff like that. It's just not going to help either of us grow and hit our goals.
Yeah. So you got to have the conversation where you may have to admit, hey, I made a mistake. You have to say, hey, I want to first off, I want to apologize for the way I've gone about building relationships with you guys. I took this too casually. At the end of the day, I have to be a good example, and I've definitely made some mistakes on how we need to build a relationship and how we need to build a respect for each other. So moving forward, I'm not trying to be weird. Listen, we're all people. You guys can do whatever you want in your free time. But moving forward, I'm not going to be someone that parties with you guys. I'm not. I'm going to be someone who does what I'm supposed to do. And then obviously I'm here to build relationships and coach you guys, but that's not something I want to do moving forward. And that's a tough conversation, but that's a good way to start, right?
Yeah. And I think one of the biggest things there was admitting that you were wrong. A lot of individuals, when they get into a leadership position or even a management position, we don't want to admit we did something wrong, because it makes us feel like we're kind of inferior, like, oh, we made a wrong decision. But by telling your guys, like, listen, I messed up here, but this is how we're going to fix it moving forward. It helps both yourself grow as a person and then learn from the mistakes you made so they can maybe not make the same mistakes in the future.
Yeah. And people respect you way more when you admit when you were wrong, right? So many people think that they've got to always be right. They've got to be the person who has all the answers. And that doesn't, people, you're not relatable, right? You just kind of come across as this person who's defensive, who's insecure. It shows way more confidence. It shows actually way more strength to be the person who first says, hey, I effed up. This was my creation. I'm holding myself to, I'm holding my feet to the fire and I need to improve. And when you have that attitude towards your people, even if you were only a little bit wrong, you could be 5% wrong and most of it's them. You always want to be the first one to admit you're wrong because that's going to make people lower their guard and they're going to listen to you and have way more respect for you. Good stuff.
No, 100%. Biggest thing to just with all this in assistant management, most of the adversities we're going to see is just new learning curves. Figuring out a new pitch for your first round interviews, things along this nature. But biggest advice I could give in every single stage of this way is don't be afraid to mess up. Actually, I encourage yourself to mess up more, fail fast and fail often, because you're going to learn more from those than you would if you just skated through with no problems. And the biggest thing is don't only fail, but learn from what you failed at. So going throughout it, hitting those challenges, hitting those struggles, don't get down on yourself. Just kind of sit down, reflect, and be like, all right, so this happened, but why did it happen? And how can we prevent it from happening again? And then once you sit down, you realize that it's a good opportunity for you to sit down with the individuals on your team, admit that you made a mistake somewhere, and then coach and train them on that and explain the why behind everything. So this is why this is important not to mess up, because once you start training and coaching your team, this is where you should implement this at.
Yep. That's awesome. Good stuff.
And then on the next slide, this is kind of just implementing our solutions. So I know we kind of threw a lot at everybody about adversities throughout the day. I think this is the most important part about any type of adversity. It's implementing what you've learned. So the biggest things here are, as we touched upon, kind of the determination, how they'll help you get through everything, how they'll drive to make you want to hit your goals. So don't look at adversities in kind of negative light. Get kind of inspired and determined by them. So like for myself, I'm always looking for, we got a question, sorry.
That's okay. Continue. JP's just firing in here. He's jumping in the chat, trying to screw up your flow here, but I got you. Don't go continue. Last question.
No, but the biggest thing with that is don't look at adversity as a negative. Look at it as a positive. It's going to be weird and it's going to feel weird to do that. Being grateful for challenges and being grateful for failure throughout the business is not a bad thing, because, and like Van said earlier, in every stage and every step of the way, we have somebody who we can network who's been through the exact same situation as us, and they can coach us and train us and help us get through those situations. And the faster you fail and the more often you fail, the more prepared, the more equipped you're going to be for when you do eventually open up your own offices, and the stronger you're going to be able to build a stronger core around you to coach and train them on your past mistakes.
That's great. There's a quote. You guys all heard this quote before. People say when you have more money, there's more problems. More money, more problems. Well, I've learned from very successful people. It's also the opposite. If you can handle more problems, there's more money involved, right? So the better it's like more problems, more money. And really, if you look at the people who are dependent on the most, whether it's managers, world leaders, people that have big families, they're the ones who handle the most problems. They look at adversity, and of course, it's kind of scary. But once you become confident enough to handle adversities, you don't look at them as adversities. Look at like a doctor. Like what they do is like literally everybody comes to them and says, "Hey, here's my problem," and because they can solve problems at a high rate, that's what makes them valuable to society. And the better you are at that, the more money you make. And I really look at our training program is literally, it's like a problem solving test over and over and over again. Like, how good are you at solving problems? How good are you when someone hands you something that you've never solved before, learning it? Maybe you fail at solving it, but you learn from it. So you bounce back the next time and then you get good at it. And eventually the problems you think are the biggest deals in the world, you're going to look at it and say, that's very small. Right. And that's where you see people at the highest levels. They can solve problems 10 times as fast as they used to. And they're way less stressed about it because they have so much experience in handling adversity and handling problems. So if you're looking at the business, you're saying, what skills am I really developing? Problem solving skills by far is what the best of the best people, not only in our business, but in entrepreneurship and in leadership, those are the skills that people possess the best. So it's a great thing to learn and really kind of take accountability on as you're going through it. All right, let's get JP's question in here. He says, do you feel the challenges that you have gone through over the past 5 months, rebuilding your office twice, has it made you a stronger leader, and why?
Oh, absolutely. So I kind of want to touch on what you said first, because this is funny. I know JP and Rob are probably both listening. They can relate with this. When I first opened up, I was going through problems that I thought was world ending. I thought, business was going to crash. I was going out of business tomorrow, but it was just little things. Looking back at it now, I'm like, oh, so this is how I would handle it. But back to JP's question, it has helped me grow as a better leader in a multitude of ways. So it's helped me with my critical thinking. It's helped me with conversational skills. It's helped me with preempting individuals on problems they're going to face. And it's really helped me not being scared to have conversations. A lot of times, myself included, individuals get scared to have certain conversations because they feel like it's going to draw out negatives. But instead of that, we're just preparing them for future problems that they can encounter. So going out there, I have a lot of conversations with my guys on the first day. I'm like, listen, you're going to go out there. It's going to be tough. And I'm going to be honest with you. You're going to mess up. And they kind of look at me. I'm like, but all I ask is you mess up about 10 times and you do it with confidence. Because the more times you mess up when you're out there, the quicker you are going to grow from door to door, which is going to make you ultimately a better individual and a better business professional throughout your time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think like when I look at just what we all go through and you said it's made you a better leader, like, challenges, it's not just in business that it helps us in our personal lives. Like, we all saw our families during Thanksgiving, and all of us at some point have either family drama, something goes on, we have relationship drama. And what's crazy is like over the last decade that I've been in this industry, I've like to my family, I'm like Gandhi. I mean, they talk to me and like I'm calming everyone down, right? Giving them perspective. And I'm not young, but I'm not old, yet I'm teaching people that are 30 years my senior how to have a better attitude and a better perspective on whatever situations they're in, because, we all become professional problem solvers where we have to have a good attitude. We have to look at the bright side. We have to look at the glass half full and see the silver linings right away. Because if we didn't, people wouldn't follow us, right? And being a leader is a big responsibility. It's hard. But when you look at it as an opportunity to be someone who can positively impact other people, like it becomes more like your mission is to be someone who helps others have a better perspective on things. To me, I've been both. I've been someone who wasn't in a leadership position, and I've been someone who is in a leadership position. And I'd always choose leadership, even though it's really tough to become a leader. But once you become it and you become skilled at it, it's an amazing gift that you can help other people with, because people need good leaders. And if you can become one, you'll have an amazing positively impact on yourself, on the business you're in, and obviously from a personal life perspective, it's one of the greatest gifts I've got from this business is just how to have a better attitude and how to look at things and how to look at adversities. So, all right, Pat, what else we got? Any other slides?
I think the takeaways was just don't be afraid to fail. As we touched upon throughout the whole process, the quicker you fail and the more you fail, the stronger you're going to become. Just like you said, in your personal life and in the business itself. Face adversity head on. It'll help your development a lot quicker. For myself, I still look at places where I could fail. And if I did fail, even if it's something as little as just paperwork, all right, how could I get better at, better finding time in my day or tweaking the schedule here? And then get comfortable with being uncomfortable. That's my biggest saying. So a lot of individuals on this call are going to have the opportunity to expand to probably somewhere that's a new state, a new town, somewhere they're not comfortable with. And it's going to be scary. For myself, I got the opportunity to move from New Jersey to Boston, and I was scared. But I honestly wouldn't change it for the world, just because for the sole fact that stepping outside of what I was comfortable with has helped me grow just tremendously as both a person and as a business professional. Now going out, just the confidence I have in every single day life, knowing that being up here, yes, I have people I can network with, JP and Rob, but none of them are in the same office where I can just run and have them solve my issues for me. It's helped me grow to where I've been in the business a year, but I feel like I've been here for more than 2 to 5, just from the amount of personal growth I've taken from just getting outside of my comfort zone and moving to a new state and taking the opportunity that was presented.
Yeah. Well, guys, if you're listening, we got like kind of like a new watermark on what's possible, which is, 5 months from entry level to management. And when I look at leaders, I think that the biggest problem I see across the board is people, they don't think big enough, fast enough. Their goals aren't aggressive enough. I sometimes hear leaders say, hey, my goal is to get promoted in a year. It's like, well, why would you say a year when you see people getting promoted in 3 months, 5 months, 6 months from scratch? People say, hey, they'll be a leader in the field and they'll say, I want to open up, at the end of next year. It's like, well, why? Why would you not want to open up faster? And I think, when you listen to Pat, guys, he sounds like a guy who's been in our industry for, a decade, and he's only been doing this a year. And that to me is one of the most exciting things. And when I was new, that's really what fired me up, was seeing other new people, really progress quickly. And of course, there's people who don't pan out, but I wasn't paying attention to those people. I was looking at the people who were really moving up the ladder fast. So I think it's great, Pat, to, for you to be able to accomplish what you've accomplished and overcome the challenges. And if you're only a year in the business, I can't imagine where you'll be at, 2 years from now, 4 years from now, 8 years from now. It's really exciting because not only are people getting promoted faster to management, you're going to see regionals and nationals get promoted faster than ever before. And it's really just a great time in our business, regardless of all the crazy COVID stuff that we've had to deal with. To have people getting promoted like this, it's an amazing testament to what's going on. So we got one last question. When you got promoted and had to rebuild, what things did you find helped your rebuild? What areas did you focus on more than others?
So the biggest thing was during the rebuild, obviously I was down about a lot of things, but you have to look for something exciting in every single day. So for myself, to start it off, it's all right, from interviews, I'm excited to talk to people. I'm excited to find quality people to bring back in, to give them an opportunity to become successful just like me. And the areas I focused on the most was just developing relationships. You have to show people the fun in the business, but also show them the opportunity. If bringing people in, you're just stressed and work, you have such a tight schedule to where they're not enjoying their time as well as learning and growing, they're not going to want to stick around. So the two things I really focused on were just good conversations and enjoying what we were doing every single day and looking for something exciting.
Yeah. Well, guys, Pat left his phone number here, 609-204-7300. And his email right there is ptomp44@yahoo.com. Pat, again, congratulations. What an amazing story. And I know you're just in the beginning of what you're going to build moving forward into your future, but we appreciate you taking the time today. Great job being a first-time speaker. I can't believe you just did that, because if I was at your stage in the business, I could barely run an impact at Dallas. So the fact that you're doing this is pretty incredible. So Pat, thank you so much. Appreciate everybody hopping on the call today. We will be back here in a couple of weeks. So everyone have a fantastic finish to your week, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks, Pat.
Appreciate it, guys. Thank you.